What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Gordon Lightfoot. And we're returning to the complete greatest hits compilation. Thank you again to Yvonne for sharing. And the next track is Canadian Railroad Trilogy, which all of the words are pretty clear, but I don't quite know what to make of this. And if it is a proper name reference, I am ignorant of the source. So in that regard, okay, Canadian, that's clear enough. Something that is in and or related to Canada. Railroad, it's a form of travel which not only goes back multiple centuries, but which is distinct in terms of its manner and the way that it cuts through countrysides and different vistas and can span great distances. Trilogy suggests 3 parts, though if I don't know the context for the trilogy, then it's hard to get a sense of what that, like 3 different railroads, 3 different sequences of time, or 3 different experiences by a given individual on Canadian railroads. I feel like it could go some different ways. So yes, I really don't know what to make of it, even if the words themselves are very clear. Let's give it a listen. This is Canadian Railroad Trilogy by Gordon Lightfoot, a track included in his complete greatest hits compilation.
There was a time in this fair land when the railroad did not run. When the wild, majestic mountains stood alone against the sun. Long before the white man and long before the wheel. When the green, dark forest was too silent to be real. But time has no beginnings and the history has no bounds. As to this verdant country they came from all around. They sailed upon her waterways and they walked the forest tall. Built the mines, mills and the factories for the good of us all. And when the young man's fancy was turning to the spring, the railroad men grew restless for to hear the hammers ring. Their minds were overflowing with the visions of their day, and many a fortune lost and won, and many a debt to pay. For they looked in the future, and what did they see? The sun iron road running from the sea to the sea, bringing the goods to a young grown land, all up from the seaport sent into their hands. Look away, said they, across this mighty land, from the eastern shore to the western strand. Bringing the workers and bring up the rails, we gotta lay down the tracks and tear up the trails. Open their heart, let the lifeblood flow. Gotta get on our way, 'cause we're moving too slow. Bringing the workers and bring up the rails, we're gonna lay down the tracks and tear up the trails. Open their heart, let the lifeblood flow. Gotta get on our way, 'cause we're moving too slow. Get on our way, 'cause we're moving too slow. Behind the blue Rockies, the sun is declining. The stars, they come stealing at the close of the day. Across the wide prairie, our loved ones lie sleeping. Beyond the dark oceans, in a place far away, we are the navvies who work upon the railway, swinging our hammers in the bright blazing sun. living on stew and drinking bad whiskey, bending our backs till the long days are done. We are the navvies who work upon the railway, swinging our hammers in the bright blazing sun, laying down track and building the bridges, bending our backs till the railroad is done. So over the mountains and over the plains, into the muskeg and into the rain, up the St. Lawrence all the way to Gaspé, swinging our hammers and drawing our nails, laying them in and tying them down, away to the bunkhouse and into the town. $1 a day and a place for my head, a drink to the living, a toast to the dead. Oh, the song of the future has been sung. All the battles have been won. On the mountain tops we stand, all the world at our command. We have opened up the soil with our teardrops and our toil. Oh, there was a time in this fair land when the railroad did not run, when the wild, majestic mountains stood alone against the sun, long before the white man and long before the wheel, when the green dark forest was too silent to be real, when the green dark forest was too silent to be real, and many are the dead men too silent to be real.
Wow. That's incredible. That's the kind of tune that you don't forget if you ever hear it. And it's, again, a tune that reminds me of someone like Bob Dylan, someone who tells these really intricate stories with multiple sections all while strumming away on a guitar. And here it's like the tempo shifts, the stylistic evolution, including, parts that feel like folk rock, parts that have a bit of a country sound, and then like bringing in new instruments, like the harmonica really stands out in that one section. The tempo picking up to the point where it sounds like a train rolling on the tracks. And it feels like it's telling this, I suppose, national story, but also a multicultural and, in a way, international story about the history of the industrialization of Canada. And not necessarily in a way that's making strong value judgments necessarily. Like, it struck me as saying, like, okay, so there's a time when this was like uninhabited wilderness. The mountains stood by themselves against the sun, and the tall dark forest, they were silent in a way that later generations would change when humans came in increasing numbers. And of course, making reference to, like, before the white man, it draws a distinction between the First Nations people who would inhabit these wilderness areas before Europeans came, and before these tracks were then built and, like, trails were eliminated. So, like, it's making reference to seemingly multiple phases of the history, and then it's talking about the workers who, it sounds like were, in some cases, people just looking for a way of life, people looking to make money or to be part of this new thing, maybe people who were conscripted, or maybe people who weren't necessarily going to reap the benefits of what these railroads had to offer. But then it's also talking about, like, bringing goods from the seaboard to these other towns, looking out over these prairies where other folks have now settled. So it's kind of like telling this multifaceted tapestry of a historical story, which again, it talks about the mines and the factories that are going to benefit us all. And of course, that could be more genuine in terms of like, well, it's going to bring material goods to people who are trying to forge their way through this wilderness and to eke out a living in areas that formerly were, entirely wild. But of course, it also suggests that when you're covering over trails or getting rid of trails for railroad tracks, First Nation or earlier ways of life and pathways are being overwritten by this new industrial, mining coal from the mountains and using it for fuel for the trains, which are now crossing through these, forest and mountainous areas. So, like, it seems like it's sort of looking through things from multiple lenses, kind of taking like an overhead view and not really like, being a scathing critique of any of it. I will say, like, Navis, was it? Like, I don't quite know that reference. And I wondered, like, if this meant, like, European, like, immigrants who were, like, looking for employment and ended up being the ones who lay down this track and, just eating stew and drinking bad whiskey and, not really having the most nutritious or wholesome sustenance, but who, again, eked out a living and were, part of this bigger process. Also, I was thinking maybe that could be a reference to like indigenous labor, like maybe that's a reference to a First Nation or something like that. I don't know, but yeah, again, it's like telling this long arc story from the point of view seemingly of like initially nature itself and then like early settlers and then later immigrants and industrialists or settlers and so on. So yeah, it's just this really compelling history, and he talks about history being unbounded and so on. So it's like it's spanning a very long period of time, but then telling a particular story about how train tracks took over what used to be an earlier natural setting, but was part of what built eventually the Canadian nation in terms of connecting different parts of this large geographical area and bringing material goods from the seaboard where they're being shipped in to these outlying territories. So really compelling lyrically, even if I don't fully understand some of the details along the way. Really compelling vocally. He just has a great voice, and here he's like, it's flourishing and fluttering in some moments, but also sounds very folksy at the same time. We've got that harmonica, we've got the lovely guitar playing, which again gets more jangly in some sections, and then the tempo picks up, and it really did feel in the fastest sections like I'm on a train and it's rolling along and I can see these forests, but now this these tracks that are cutting through them and the black smoke billowing up from the engine, or the, is it an engine? What do you call the like main driving car of the train? Is it the engine? I'm showing my ignorance here, but yes, ultimately, like, it created a very rich image, even as I'm thinking about it, historically and culturally and so on. So yeah, a really awesome tune, one that I need to listen to again and let it digest, but I do get, the more I listen to his music, why he's this significant name, which, this is an example of a handful of deep dives where it's like a name that I've known for a long time, but not really had any knowledge of the actual substance of their music. And so to hear Gordon singing and his guitar playing and his songwriting has been very enjoyable, even as we're in this very early stage of this large collection of greatest hits. So shout out to Yvonne once again. Shout out to Kim, who's been commenting already on the Gordon reactions. Looking forward to more, and I will see you for the next one. Peace.